Hey folks, and welcome back. Today we're going to talk about logical appeals and how you use them in your argument. So we're going to start with pathos, or arguments based on emotion. So emotional appeals or appeals to pathos are powerful tools for influencing what people think and believe. We all make decisions, even including the most important decisions in our lives, based on our feelings. So, as a writer, you can use emotion to build bridges. You may sometimes want to use emotions to connect with readers to assure them that you understand their experiences or you feel their pain. Such a bridge is especially important when you're writing about matters that readers regard as sensitive. Another way to build an emotional tie with a reader is to share your experiences and provide an opportunity for a reader to experience empathy for you. So, if you're going to ask the question, how do you win over an audience when the logical claims that you're making are likely to go against what many in that audience believe? The answer is pathos. I've heard it said that you can't use logic to get somebody out of an argument that they didn't use logic to get into, but you can use pathos. You can use emotions to really sustain your arguments. You can also use emotional appeals to make logical claims stronger or more memorable. So, for example, a video clip of a scowling politician speaking dismissively about an important issue is likely to damage his or her reputation more than just the text of the argument he made against that important issue. If somebody can see it and experience it and feel it, they have a different reaction to it than if they're just understanding the logic behind it. And those strong emotions can add energy to a passage or to an argument. You can also use humor in argument. A lot of times when we think about emotions, we think about negative emotions, but humor has always played an important role in argument. It can put the reader at ease. A lot of times it makes them more open to accept your argument, but a word of caution, not all humor is well intended or barbed free. In fact, among the most powerful forms of emotional argument is ridicule. This is humor aimed at a particular target. But because ridicule is a double-edged sword, it definitely requires a deft hand to wield it. This means that humor that reflects bad taste can discredit a writer, as does satire that misses its mark. So if you can use humor successfully, great. Go for it. If not, then you may want to skip it completely. So, a lot of times we see pathos used in things like advertisements. So, here we see Colin Kaepernick and the words believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. And obviously, these words, pull up some strong emotions. This idea that you could sacrifice everything for something that you believed in. And when, companies like Nike use this, obviously their ultimate goal is to sell a product, is to, create a memorable ad campaign that will leave their name in your head. And when they use emotions to do something like this, it's successful. Okay, let's talk about ethos, which is arguments based on character. So, arguments based on character depend on trust and reputation. Ethos really includes three main elements: credibility, authority, and unselfish or clear motive. So, let's look at how these affect arguments. So, using ethos means essentially that you're establishing trustworthiness or credibility. This speaks to a writer's honesty, their respect for an audience and its values, and plain old likability. These are all very important characteristics to have as a writer. So let's look at who is claiming authority. When you read or listen to an argument, You have every right to ask about the writer's authority. What do they know about the subject, or how much do they know about the subject? What experiences do they have that make them especially knowledgeable? And why should I pay attention to this person specifically? And these are all very important questions to ask when you're reading somebody else's work. But they're also the questions that your readers are going to ask when they are reading your work. So there's some things that you can do to kind of make sure that your readers trust you. When people are trying to convince you of something, it's important and natural to ask, whose interest are they serving and how will they profit from their proposal? Your readers will ask this about you. You should ask this about things that you read. And I really want you to think about these things. A lot of times we read, scientific studies that were done. And it's a good thing to say, like, who paid for this study? And why did they pay for it? Such questions go to the heart of sort of the ethical argument here. So there's a couple of things that you can do to really establish ethos in your own writing. First of all, listen carefully to and acknowledge your audience's values, showing respect for them and establishing common ground where and if possible. And then you can establish your authority by showing that you have done your homework and that you know your topic well. By the time you finish with a research project or something like that, you should kind of be a little bit of an expert in that topic. And then I really want you as a writer to think about, what are my motives for writing this paper? What, if anything, do I stand to gain from this argument? And how can I explain those advantages to my audience? Okay, let's talk about logos. This is facts and reason, or arguments based on facts and reason. Now, there's different types of reasoning. We talked about inductive and deductive reasoning, and there's different types of evidence too. We have two main types, and everything falls within one of these two categories. The first one is artistic proofs. These are arguments that the writer or speaker creates. They're constructed arguments. They appeal to reason or to common sense. And then we have unartistic proofs. These are arguments that the writer or speaker is given. These are things like hard evidence, facts, statistics, testimonies, witness accounts, contracts, documents, things like that. So there's just a couple examples of some arguments here. Let's look at if they're artistic or unartistic. So drunk drivers are involved in more than 50% of traffic deaths. This is an example of an inartistic or unartistic piece of evidence, right? It's just a fact. It doesn't say anything about why we have so many drunk drivers or anything like that. DNA test of skin found under the victim's fingernails suggest that the defendant was responsible for the assault. Now, this is a combination of artistic and unartistic reasoning. So we see the DNA test of skin found under the victim's fingernails identify a particular person. That is an unartistic proof. That is not created. That is just a fact. But suggesting that the defendant was responsible for the assault, that is artistic. Maybe that person was, maybe that person wasn't. There's more than one way to get skin underneath fingernails. A psychologist testified that teenage violence could not be blamed on video games. Here we have a strictly artistic proof. This is an argument that somebody has created. Doesn't mean it's not right, it just means that it's created. The crowds at Presidential Trump's inauguration were the largest on record. Here we have an artistic proof. This is an argument that somebody makes. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Once again, this is artistic. This is something that somebody created. Airbags ought to be removed from vehicles because they can kill young children and small-framed adults. Once again, this is a combination. We have an artistic proof, something that is created. Airbags should be removed from vehicles. combined with an unartistic proof because they can kill young children or small-framed adults. That's just a fact that we are looking at and using in our argument. So let's talk about different types of logos that you can use. The first one that we're going to talk about is facts. Gathering factual information and transmitting it faithfully practically defines what we mean by professional journalism and scholarship. How you handle your facts will say a lot about you as a writer. When your facts are compelling, maybe they stand on their own, but a lot of times we want to bolster those facts by incorporating credible sources, and this also reflects positively on you as a writer. In scholarly arguments, there are higher expectations for accuracy. If you use a fact other than something that is common knowledge, like H2O is the chemical name for water, you need to tell your reader where you got it from specifically. We also have statistics. Now, statistics are tricky. There's an old saying that says there are 3 kinds of lies. Lies, damned lies, and statistics. So numbers don't speak for themselves. You need somebody to interpret them. The numbers have to be interpreted by a writer, and writers almost always have some sort of agenda that shape their interpretation. When you use statistics, or if you need to use statistics, then use them carefully, and remember that your careful reading of the numbers is essential. We have surveys and polls. Surveys and polls a lot of times provide strong persuasive appeals because a lot of times people want to align themselves with the will of the majority. When you use surveys and polls in your work, however, it's important to ask some questions. Who commissioned the poll? Who is publishing its outcome? And who was surveyed and in what proportion? And this matters. A lot of times when we talk about political polls and how somebody's doing in the numbers, they call people on home phones to ask questions. Well, do the people in this country that still have home phones or like landlines represent all of the demographics of this country? Well, no, maybe not. So it's important to just gather information like that and figure out how reliable the surveys and polls you're looking at were. Then we have testimonies and narratives. A lot of times writers will support arguments by presenting human experiences, especially those experiences of themselves. Personal testimonies and narratives can support a claim convincingly and logically, especially if a writer has earned the trust of the readers. And then we also have reason and common sense. These arguments are often used when hard facts either don't exist or are not needed. So, for example, if I said something like, we better cancel the picnic because it's going to rain, there are facts that exist in that statement but aren't really needed. Like, picnics are ordinarily held outdoors, and when the weather is bad, it's best to cancel picnics because a 70% chance of rain means that it's more likely to rain than not. And when rain is more likely to occur than not, it's better to go ahead and cancel our picnic because we all know that soggy bread is gross. So I used reason to come to that conclusion and sort of common sense. Now, if you have questions about any of these types of appeals, rhetorical appeals, just let me know, reach out, or you can ask on the class discussion board. As always, I'm happy to help. Have a great day, folks.